My name is Mike Bailey. I'm with Handi Medical Supply. This is going to be a real informal discussion about competitive bidding. We have a young lady here, Rose Schaffhauser from MAMES, who's going to be the facilitator of this event. But I do want to remind everyone that we are videotaping this conference. And the reason that we're doing, or this session, and the reason that we're doing this is I intend on using that information to send to Secretary Price, to Klobuchar, to Franken's office, so that they can see exactly what it is you guys are going through as it relates to your experience with competitive bidding. I'd also like to introduce Melanie from the Office of Inspector General here in Minnesota. So Melanie has joined us as well to hear and get feedback and hear your stories and what kind of experiences you're having. We did invite all of the national legislators to join us today, none of them were able to attend, or their staff were able to attend. However, Representative Tom Emmers did send us a video message, and would you play that for us, please?
Hello everyone, Congressman Tom Emmer here. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak at today's Handi Medical Conference. Unfortunately, with a busy week in Washington, my schedule wouldn't allow for my attendance. I wish I could be with you, but I hope this video will make up for my absence. I got involved in politics 10 years ago, and I've had the honor of serving the great state of Minnesota ever since. During my time in office, I've met with Minnesotans from all walks of life. It's the best part of my job, meeting and speaking with everyone, and even though we might not always see eye to eye, it's imperative that these discussions are had and that every voice is heard. While we might not agree on every issue, I'd like to think that we all agree on this, that we all love our community, we all love the state of Minnesota, and we all love this great country. That's why I decided to get involved. I saw decisions were being made, and I just wasn't happy with how the decisions were affecting the state that I love. I know that's why you all chose to get involved as well. Your participation here today is immensely important. You're striving to create change for the better, and I really admire that. As you know, there's much uncertainty surrounding the competitive bidding program. Our rural suppliers have been hit the hardest by proposed changes to the bidding program, and it's those communities that most need these services. Rural communities should not suffer under the program. Former Representative Tom Price, our new Health and Human Services Secretary, led the effort to stop durable medical equipment reimbursement rates, and I was a co-sponsor of his legislation that would extend the phase-in of competitive bid rates for durable medical equipment in rural areas. I'm encouraged that he might use this expertise and his passion for rural communities in his new role. With everything that is going on in the healthcare field, I want you to know that you always have my ear and my time. Big changes are ahead, and I'm confident that these changes will make vast improvements on the daily lives of all Minnesotans. Thank you again for the invitation, but most importantly, thank you for your participation.
So those are that was a nice message from Congressman Emmers. And with that, I think also helping us today is Miriam Lieber from Lieber Consulting. So she's here helping as well. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Rose for you to take it from here.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. All right. Again, thank you so much for joining my program here today. My name is Rose Schaffhauser, and I'm the Executive Director for the Midwest Association for Medical Equipment Services, also known as MAMES, and we're now a new 8-state association made up of Minnesota, Iowa, Kansas, Nebraska, North Dakota, South Dakota, and now Wisconsin. So our industry, as you know, has been completely under attack under the program that you've heard and talked about is the Durable Medical Equipment Competitive Bidding Program that has a great impact on everybody in this room today. And so our hope for today is to just kind of give you an overview of what the latest update is, both on the legislative and the regulatory side, so you guys can understand what this is doing to the impact of what you're trying to do is take care of your respective customers. And so again, our agenda today is just going to kind of go through introduction. As Mike indicated, we had really had hoped to have our Minnesota legislators here today, but unfortunately they did not make it. It's the second year in a row that every one of them have been invited so that they can personally hear from you folks. But again, that's why we're recording this session, so we're able to share with them your story. So by the time we get done with this program, under the roundtable discussions, you'll have an opportunity to share your story, and it will get heard. So again, what I'm going to do is give you an update. As you know, the Minneapolis-St. Paul area is in round 2 competitive bidding, and those contracts just were renegotiated, and you may have new contractors that you started work with July 1st, right? Right, okay. Now those contracts only last for 2.5 years. They expire on December 31st, 2018. Then you'll have another opportunity. Another program is going to begin, and it's now going to be called Round 2019, and that's where the entire country all bids for durable medical equipment and supplies. So you may have some more new companies that you're going to be working with. But the good thing, and as you've heard earlier with Congressman Emmers, and you'll hear a little bit more when we talk about Secretary Price, we're hopeful that some of the happenings and moving along and all this fast-moving train is going to get slowed down a little bit with Health and Human Services Secretary Price, because we're hopeful that he will have some opportunities regulatory-wise to slow down this fast-moving train. And so CMS had put out this big, massive announcement on Round 2019, get ready for it, you know, start getting accredited and all these things. Well, they pulled back that announcement, and the reason for their announcement is a temporary delay. And so they have a feeling that, I mean, Congressman Price from the get-go said, you know, what you guys have done to this program, you're really going to hurt the Medicare beneficiary, and as you folks know, it is. So the other update is now, and I don't know how many in this room, how many of you do service like the rural areas in Minnesota? Any hands? Okay, you do? All right. The rural areas are now even being impacted, and it's even worse. In the cities, you only have certain companies you can pull from, but what those companies did and why they did the competitive bidding program is they got to see an increase in the volume and, you know, causing delays for you to get your equipment, but they had more volume, less competition, so okay, that's supposedly what you do when you competitively bid. But the rural areas, guess what? They got forced all those prices. And so they don't get to see increased competition. They don't get to see more people because they got contracts. Their business is exactly the same. So they don't get more volume with this program, so they just see less reimbursement. So we were successful in the Cures Act that passed. How many of you heard about the Cures Act? Okay, right. We did get a little bit of a reprieve in those allowables for the rural areas. And so there's some things that happened that it was very positive for the industry, but part of it now is going to include that these prices are going to be rolled down to Medicaid. And so there's some many things that, again, impact what you guys do and are greatly impact. There's a few medical equipment companies in this room, and their livelihood is in danger because you can't keep going a race to the bottom in prices and continue to be able to service the patients the way that you guys were used to having them being serviced. So again, the other thing they did, and again, this is, we're hopeful now with Congressman or Secretary Price, I have to get used to that. We're hopeful that he's going to be able to fix some of the things that CMS has done to the industry. One of the things they recently did is done a dramatic decrease in how they reimburse oxygen. And I don't know if it's had any impact on anybody that's not servicing rural America, but the rural areas, they're actually receiving less money for oxygen than those of the competitive bidding contractors that you guys work with. So it's had a great impact. And again, several folks are finding that they're not being able to find people to take care of them. And it's going to have a dramatic impact on what it is that you folks do. So one of the things I want to point out, and you guys are going to be impacted by this, see that last bullet there? The reduction just in the Minnesota durable medical equipment providers has reduced from 24.3% from this time last year. Our members alone in the Midwest Association, we lost 2 members right away at the end of last year just because they could no longer hold on. They could no longer make money. And again, it's this industry, we're not driving Cadillacs, we're not driving, going anywhere. We're just trying to survive and take care of your patients. And so the impact of everything that's happened here, that's why it's so important for you guys to be able to share your stories and what's happening to you when you're trying to take care of the patient. That's all of the durable medical equipment people, that's all what they want to do. They want to be able to get you your equipment. They want to be able to provide that stuff for your patients and get them out of the hospital, get them where they need to be in their home where they want to be. So again, legislative actions, we're very, very hopeful with Secretary Price, but we also continue to mold and have some senators and representatives that really understand this industry so that we can have an opportunity to fix some of the things that are wrong. And so we continue to have to the neighbor to the south or to the west, South Dakota Senator Thune. He has committed to help us out. And now that Representative Price is now Secretary Price, we're also cultivating a representative, and one of the representatives we really need in the state of Minnesota to understand us is also Representative Paulson. He is on one of the committees of jurisdiction that's over the health care and things that they make the decision here. So we're real hopeful that with the stories that are being shared, it's starting to impact the beneficiaries. The stuff that you guys have done and continue to do, that's what they need to hear. They've been hearing from us for years, absolutely years. And it's time that we truly get recognized. We're only here to help save money in healthcare. We're only 1.2% of the Medicare budget, I believe. So, and then now, part of the Cures Act is, as I mentioned earlier, starting January 1, 2018, there is going to be a reduction from the federal government on what they pay for Medicaid medical equipment. So us at the state level in Minnesota have been meeting with our state legislators, and we're in the process, in fact there's a meeting today, we're in the process of trying to get legislation introduced that would help offset those costs or those reductions. And so again, without getting too technical with you, it's supposed to address that the state's going to have some flexibility and having that reimbursement not be as dramatic as competitive bidding. And we hope to have a bill number within the next week or so, right, Mike? Yeah. Okay. And so we're going to need your help too, not only at the federal level, but also at the state level, because that again is very, especially for the Medicaid population, those folks don't have the money. So with that, this whole program today is supposed to have an opportunity for you folks to share your stories. These are the stories that will be shared with our legislators and with Secretary Price. So this is your opportunity to really tell them what this program has done for you guys to be able to take care of your patients. So
I was in Atlanta, Georgia at MedTrade, and Secretary Price spoke, and he said he wanted to see these stories. He wants to hear the experiences that people are either beneficiaries are having, and or healthcare professionals are having in navigating through the competitive bidding landscape.
Yep, absolutely. And we actually, I might have to talk to Mike here because he's got some influence. We probably should be doing this program at the end of the day when there might be something stronger than coffee. Or, like I said,
Sure about that, Rose.
oh, okay. Well, again, this is a kind of a support group, and I think Miriam, if you would stand up and maybe tell them a little bit about yourself. We go out. I mean, we get our medical equipment providers together, and it's, you know, it's just devastating. But once people start talking and they realize, well, what are some of the things that you guys do, they kind of take home with them. So, Miriam, just quick talk about who you are and what you do.
I'm a consultant in the industry. I get to go to companies like Mike's all over the country to really understand what it takes to get the job done, to be able to provide the services that are provided for your patients at home. And along the way, I meet amazing people who actually are in this for the right reason, as Rose said, and also just trying to make sure to stay as efficient as possible so that they can continue to provide services. And obviously, it's been a challenge, more challenging than ever before. I would say in the old days, it wasn't such a challenge. Today, it's just a challenge to stay afloat. And we work on ways to do that, to continue to provide services. Particularly in the rural areas, I would say access to care has been compromised. That's not to say it hasn't been compromised in the cities as well, but the message has to be that in order to continue to serve the patients, which is the primary objective, we have to be able to just make ends meet. And even when, if you think about it for a moment, Christine, you're making ends meet, but then 3 years later, they come and want to recoup the money because they don't exactly like the documentation. It's always suspect. There's always reason to believe that there might be something down the line that you have to worry about. So I work hard to try to help people make sure that they stay as smooth and clean as possible. Of course, remaining compliant within the guidelines. At the same time, also trying to stay afloat and keep a business running. So sustainability is really in question today, and that's what I think this is about, is to hear it from your vantage point. What is it that you experience on the other end of it that we also feel, because we have to hear all sides of the story.
Thank you, Miriam. And I think this is an opportunity when I mentioned that the new contract program began, or the new contractors started July 1st, 2016. I saw some smirks and smiles and whatnot. Does anybody want to share a story of what happened when they were transitioned? I mean, did you have any issues when you had one round of, okay, all right.
I'm a therapist, and one of our major companies lost the bid, or they didn't get it back. So then I got tons and tons of calls saying that they're just dropping my order, they no longer can meet my needs, can you help me? So I probably had a stack this high of people who no longer could get their wheelchairs, scooters, whatever, and I had to help them find a new company and then resubmit all of my documentation to the new company.
Oh my gosh,
Finding
oh
a new
my
company
gosh.
was great too, because we got a list of all of the companies that we could use, went through, called all of them, oh no, we're not doing wheelchairs. So that's half the other battle, is that all these companies are getting the bid, but they're picking and choosing what they're providing.
So if I may, I want to make sure. So companies that you showed on a list
That had the bid.
that had the bid said they did not have the bid and would not work on that.
Yep, so yeah, some of them said, no, we don't have the bid, what are you talking about? I said, well, you're on the list that you have it. And then a lot of them just said, nope, we're not doing wheelchairs. So they're picking and choosing what's the most profitable for them, I'm assuming. So no, we're only doing beds, we're only doing oxygen.
I see.
And so I have, very minimal people that I can use in Minnesota.
So are you also saying, if I may, Alicia, are you saying that there was no type of transition made at all?
A phone call.
Okay.
And then for that, as a patient, it's really hard to understand that.
Yeah.
And they gave them options, but they didn't know what those options were.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Here, this is a list of people you can call to help you continue on with this process. although it may have been started 6 months before, and then all of a sudden it's just done.
So you weren't aware that they had lost the contract and that you would have to start finding new people?
I was aware that they lost it.
Okay.
But I then had to do research to help these people because they couldn't figure it out on their own. They didn't know what to do. So, and then I had to redo all my paperwork too.
Okay, and then so to top that off now, because you had the list of contractors, those contractors supposedly were supposed to handle multiple equipment. So can you explain your process of what you have to do if somebody needs a wheelchair, a hospital bed, oxygen? I mean, are you calling and making?
I did, yeah, but that's not, as a therapist, I do the evals, you know, and I see them for follow-up, write their letters of medical necessity, but that's, I don't have time in my day to do that. That's not necessarily part of my job description, but it got thrown on my plate, so, you know, it was just what I did. But
Right.
it's okay, I'm not gonna let patients just be not getting equipment, so.
So
yeah.
when you have that delay, can you maybe explain what that delay has done for that patient? I mean, what happens? Are they stuck in the hospital or are they at home without the equipment? Can you?
Home without the equipment, yeah, just not getting what they need, probably declining, probably falling, probably ending up back in the hospital. Yeah.
And then what, on average, what would you guess that it takes for you to get that equipment?
In general, or when
We'll
that
try to
happens?
have you generalize it.
Probably that process for those patients that were kind of stuck in that middle time, I bet it took them a year.
Oh, wow.
I think I still have a couple people that are hanging out that, or people that just stopped because it was too long, or, you know, they just said, forget it. You know, if it was just a regular wheelchair or a scooter, they may have just, bought it themselves, got a rent, you know, something that didn't meet their needs, but they needed something.
Okay. With that, I heard you kind of agreeing as well, Christine.
So I am a physical therapist, and I hadn't really run into it. I work at United Hospital, but this switch would have just happened. My 85-year-old mother went out of town over Labor Day weekend. They managed to get her in her own car and drive her back, and then I got in her car and took her to Summit Ortho Quick Care was open. And they diagnosed her and told her what she needed to do. She had a pelvic fracture and 3 wrist fractures in her right wrist. So she's pretty spry for 85. So you're gonna need a platform walker. Here's a list of vendors. This is Saturday, Labor Day weekend. So it's 2:40, we get to the car, and the only place still open was Handi, actually. And I got here darn fast, because they closed at 3. And I came in, ran in at 5 to 3, told them the story. Of course, she can't get out of the car. And his face, the person I was talking to, his face just fell, and he's like, we don't have the Medicare contract now. And so you would have to buy the equipment and sign a waiver that you won't submit it to Medicare. Well, as a physical therapist, I didn't think we had enough platforms at the hospital for me to take one of those. But I knew we had plenty of walkers, so I bought the platform, and we took off to United. Now, I can't even get her out of the car to go to the bathroom until I got something she can walk with.
Right.
So, you know, we had a wheelchair at Summit, so. So I went to United. They happened to have extra platforms at that point, but I didn't get her, so I, you know, got a whole platform walker. I ended up being able later to return that platform because I never opened it. But had I not been a physical therapist and couldn't run to United Hospital and get equipment, she did not get her equipment until Wednesday.
Oh
this
my
was
gosh.
Saturday.
Okay.
I would have had to taken her, especially if I knew nothing, if I wasn't in the medical profession. Well, and even so, if I couldn't get equipment, I would have had to take her to the ER. She'd already been seen, diagnosed, you know, Planet Care, everything. But I would have had to take her to the ER because I wouldn't have been able to get her to the bathroom even, or not in her house. So I was sort of appalled that, oh my goodness, what would I have done? You know, I would have had to take her to the ER. Maybe she would have ended up in a TCU. She didn't need any of that if she had the equipment, but I couldn't get it.
And Christine, thank you for that story, because I think in an example like that, where in an example that you've provided, CMS comes out and says, you know what, look at how much money we have saved with the competitive bidding program. Look at how much money we've saved. What happens if she didn't have the knowledge or the opportunity to find somebody else to help take care of her mother? You know, and then you look at the increase if she would have had to go back into the emergency room. Right, right. And more often than not, how many of you have had to either have the patient buy the equipment, or you go to a loan closet? Can I see a show of hands? Yep. And that's the other thing. So guess what? They go buy the equipment. They go get it at a loan closet. You know what? That doesn't show up on any Medicare reports. That shows that the beneficiaries, you know, they're saving money because 20% of that is a whole lot less than what it used to be like before. So they're saving money, but guess what? If they're paying for it out of their pocket, it doesn't show up on any Medicare reports. If you're getting it from a loan closet, it doesn't show up on any reports. We had the MS Society here. I don't know that they're here. Normally they are, but they shared with us they couldn't keep equipment in their closets. They said, you know, because we have so many people that are going without equipment that we can't keep it in.
Rose?
Yes.
The key here is that 10 years ago, this would not have been the scenario, because 10 years ago, Handi Medical would have had you in and out of there in 5 minutes time, because they would have had what you needed.
Right.
And so the key is access to care. In addition to that, the delays, even if you get access to care, the delay in getting to that care is prominent. So it could be 3 weeks or 2 days or 5 days, but it used to be literally within minutes or hours, and we can't afford anymore as an industry to provide that level of care.
And I didn't go back to Summit, but it was like, why don't they just have the equipment? And then when I began learning about this, it's like, well, I don't know if they did before, but maybe they can't now, because the whole consignment thing is gonna be more difficult. They'd have to switch vendors, and every time the bids change, they have to switch again, so.
And they can't afford it,
And they
honest, that's the
can't-
bottom
yeah.
line, is they can't afford in some
And
cases,
so
first of all,
then
they don't
it's
have it.
not available.
So
Yeah.
it's not available, and then you end up paying cash if you can afford cash, but what if you don't have cash?
What if you can't?
What
Yeah.
if you can't afford it? And that's the key. My father has a CPAP machine, it broke. I called his vendor.
Okay.
I'm in the business. I called his vendor. They said they could repair it, but we had to get a loaner. They charged $50 for the loaner. I said I'd pay the $50 for the loaner. A month and a half later, they said, oh yes, we found out we can repair it. That'll be $330 for you to pay up front, because we don't take assignment. So for that, you can pay $330, and then Medicare may reimburse him for that. But you can go ahead and take care of that, because repairs are now excluded or included on the bid, because there weren't enough people to repair. So now anyone can take care of the repair, and of course they don't have to take assignment. So we got privileged to be able to pay for the repair if we so desired. And as a privileged person, I decided not to take them up on that offer, but rather they could come and collect their CPAP. So I could find it another way, but I was kind of appalled myself.
Thank you, Miriam. Does anybody have a story you want to talk about, maybe the most difficult discharge you've had for a Medicare patient? No? How in general, when you do discharge a Medicare patient these days, or if you're working with a Medicare patient, what has your experience been as of late?
You get what you get.
You get what you get, and that's
Not client-centered at all.
not client-centered at all. Everybody hear that? Not client-centered at all. So they're basically just whatever is the cheapest model out there, whatever they can do,
Get you home.
get you home.
And then I see them a year later in a clinic and said, this chair caused me a pressure sore. Sorry, I can't get you a new one. You got that one a year ago.
So patient care, bottom line, and again, we'll go back to CMS is raving about this program because it is saving so much money for Medicare and for the Medicare beneficiaries.
Not client-centered.
No.
So even talking about scooters, right? If it's a Medicare patient, I say, oh, this is the go-go you get. I don't care if you're 200 pounds, 6'2", this is the go-go for you. And it doesn't fit you, it's probably gonna be very unsafe, but Medicare is barely reimbursing the company to even provide it to you. So this is what you get. You can't even look at other options. this is what the company that you can use is providing for you because of what's being reimbursed.
Okay.
And then you have more expense, maybe for the pressure sore, or for my mom, I would have had to go to the ER if I couldn't get my hands on equipment. I mean, that gets charged to Medicare. That's a lot more expensive than a walker, or, or you know, bad enough pressure sore, a lot more expensive than the correct seating to begin with.
They're
Right.
reactive versus
Right.
proactive.
Right.
They want to wait till something happens.
Right, and that's why, I mean, just hearing from you folks helps us, you know, even if you're not able to do it, it helps us tell the story. And we are now seeing, I also work with the People for Quality Care. It's an organization that literally is there for the patient. And if you stop by in the exhibit hall, we do have a flyer or some information on how you can have your patient. So that patient who doesn't get the equipment they really should need, and they look at you and go, well, you know, thanks a lot, appreciate it, and it's not your fault.
Yeah.
And it's technically, and you know, again, we're not here to bash the DME suppliers. They're trying to run a business and survive. So their hands are tied. And you know, when you look at what and again, dream about those days prior to competitive bidding. Wasn't it wonderful? You know, you had Handi fighting against the other company, and they would just do backflips for you because they want your business. They want to be able to say, you want to come to us because we'll take the best care of your patient. Doesn't happen anymore. And even now in the rural areas where they do have a right, you can come to me all you want. They're saying, no, I'm sorry, I don't want any Medicare beneficiaries. And if I do get a Medicare beneficiary, you know that oxygen? You need oxygen? No, we're going to have you pay for it up front if you want it, because we have to give you 24/7 service. We have to drive you out tanks. We have to drive out this. We have to, in a snowstorm, if something happens, we're there. And we have to be there. And I have to pay staff. I have to pay my trucks. I have to pay my overhead. I can't afford to do it. So you're going to have to pay me a couple $100 a month so you can get your oxygen. Where's the patient care in that? They paid Medicare their whole entire lives. And now Medicare is not paying them. They have to pay. Oh yeah, no. They do get the Medicare payment because the DME supplier will go ahead and bill Medicare for them, and they'll do it non-assigned. Yes?
I just have a comment. So I come from a background of patient care in an outpatient setting. We do pulmonary rehab, and so speaking from an oxygen perspective, when the competitive bid picture is in place, what I see is obviously narrow companies to choose from for those who are straight Medicare, and the amount of patients influxing into that narrow pathway. It's just the service that can be provided from those few companies can't meet the demand that's being there. So we have patients that are restricted to the types of companies they can go to because of if they're straight Medicare, and then they don't get their equipment delivered to them in a timely manner, or there's less options of equipment that will meet their needs for their home use, and they do end up back in the emergency room and admitted because it was 2 days later before their oxygen was delivered, or what they have they can't carry with them to go anywhere because it's too heavy, or it doesn't keep them oxygenated. So it's been a huge factor for our population of patients that in pulmonary rehab that we spend a lot more time nowadays just with oxygen than we did a few years ago, with our scope of what entails pulmonary rehab.
And that story right there, I mean, it brings tears to your eyes, is what it does, because you're there to try to help your patient out, to try to have them have a better quality of life. And in order to do that, they need their oxygen, and it would be great to have the newest technology, the nice little backpack or whatever the case may be. But all that technology and all that opportunity for them to really, truly have what they probably need, the supplier can't do that anymore.
Right, which is one aspect, but prior to that, it's just the fact that they're not even being serviced because there's not enough availability to service them.
And that's sad.
Staff or
Yep.
Well, especially since
whatever.
the change in July. I mean, it was just, I mean, you listen to these stories where the government is picking on the most vulnerable people in our population.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that? Say that again. Say it
The
loud.
government is picking on the most vulnerable people in our population. Wow. So they don't even know what to do. They don't understand what to do. So of course we deal with a lot of seniors on Medicare, but even from a personal perspective, my mother has Alzheimer's. She wouldn't be able to figure this out. I have a brother who's special needs. I do it all for him. What if he didn't have access to that? The government has made it extremely difficult for the most vulnerable people in our population. So we see people who went through this change, got this letter, you know, they got a letter from their home care company saying, you're not gonna get oxygen from us anymore because we don't have the bid. They didn't understand what it meant, you know, and so they come in July and they say, I'm not getting oxygen anymore. I didn't even know this was going to happen. So now we're waiting, you know, unfortunately here we're talking big national companies. Those are the ones who got the bid. We have dealt a lot from our perspective with the local companies who give us a lot of good personal service. We don't get that from the big national companies. And then they of course got this huge influx of patients in July. You know, people are going weeks and weeks without oxygen.
Wow.
You can't go weeks without oxygen
Right.
and survive.
But do you understand what happened in July? I just want to make sure it's really clear that those people that were providing the oxygen took a cut of between 50 and 80% to their bottom line, so they could no longer afford to provide it. It wasn't that they wanted to do that, it was that they were forced.
Right.
So I just want to make it completely clear and very transparent that that's exactly what happened, and that's a trickle-down effect to the beneficiary or the patient who is now stuck without everything that they need. And if you looked at the laundry list of companies that can't provide it, you tell me how many are actually local. And then you can look at the ones that are 2,000 miles away, and that's gonna make it a little bit more impossible. We can't just drop ship the concentrator, or so we think, to your door.
Well, and even the companies that have local representatives, the national companies, you know, when our patients call a customer service line, they might be talking to New Jersey or Arizona or something. I mean, we have now in the last 6 months or 8 months gotten in contact with local sales representatives for these big companies, but that means they come to us, and those are the lucky ones who know who we are, who will come to us, and then we'll be on the phone in the background with this company and saying, you know, they can't wait. We need to do something about this now. And either you need to get out there or you need to send someone out there because your customer service people in Arizona don't really care.
Right, right.
So are you saying that, help me to understand on average, not the worst example, whenever an oxygen order comes in my opinion, that has to be filled that day. That's not optional. Oxygen dependent customers must have oxygen that day. Are you suggesting that they are going days and in some cases weeks without oxygen?
Our Medicare primary patients, yes, we are seeing that, sadly. Now,
But we have to, where we're coming from is these are patients who are at home. They're not,
Yeah.
most of them are not, we're not seeing them as inpatients being discharged. We're seeing them as they
Right.
come in.
But
And
you're
so-
still oxygen dependent.
So they may have been at their doctor's office and now
Okay.
all of a sudden a prescription was written for them to get oxygen that they've never had before, and that process is taking days to get filled.
Okay.
Wow. So they come into your facility. They're not currently on oxygen, but they have a prescription for oxygen after they have done all the testing and whatnot. Correct? And so the doctor, does the doctor write the order right then and there? I mean, how maybe if you can explain.
well, it depends on the process. So
Okay.
if they come in from our facility, if they are in our pulmonary clinic,
Okay.
they'll have their pulmonary function testing done, they'll have a walk test done up in the clinic, and if they're seeing the doctor right away or the nurse practitioner, an order will be written. But sometimes, I mean, those tests don't always give you all the information. They're walking 250 feet around desks and whatever in the clinic. If they end up being sent to pulmonary rehab, and now we do a standard 6-minute walk test on a track and we find out their oxygen levels drop, now we have to get in contact with the doctor or the nurse practitioner in the
Gotcha.
clinic.
Okay.
Or if they don't have a pulmonary doctor, we're talking a whole nother situation where you're contacting internal med or family practice or whatever. And then they have the 30-day requirement, so they have to see this someone within 30 days of this order being written.
Another regulation.
Another one, yep. And so, yeah, we will see some people, I mean, we have somebody right now that we had seen who we knew for weeks she needed oxygen. It took, 6 weeks to get in to see the doctor, so she's 6-8 weeks without oxygen.
And again, where's her quality of life?
The long-term effects of hypoxia. I mean, that
It's just
can
unbelievable.
lead to
And they don't
some
do
other
anything.
Quality of life.
Yeah,
Right.
They don't go out, they can't go out, or they've got, so much equipment, and here you've got, an 80-year-old woman who can't go out to Christmas with her family because, well, how do I get all this stuff there? I can't do it.
And so then you folks then, are you then trying, I mean, obviously you're trying to get them the stuff that they need, correct? So your staff time, your people time to continue to follow up and the aggravation and all the things. And again,
They're advocate. I mean,
right,
honestly,
absolutely.
they're-
Right.
We have to help them. And
Right.
We would help them. but-
Right, exactly.
And I think the other thing that you commented that doesn't always show up on Medicare, they purchase things. We see that often with oxygen, because of the way things are advertised and because, a lot of factors, maybe they can't get it, the company doesn't carry that size unit or whatever. And so they do on their own go out and they spend $3,000-$4,000 on a POC off the internet or from California or whatever, and it does not meet their needs, it's not returnable, and it's devastating to them that they spent all that money and they still are, it's not meeting their physical needs.
Wow, so that is really happening.
Oh, yeah, well, and the other frustrating part is there are some oxygen companies who will do mail order, but they'll still contract with Medicare. And so now they've done their mail order from this company in California, and then they get to us, they've had it for 3 months or 6 months or whatever, and we find out it doesn't work for them, but they can't change their contract. So now they're still contracted with this company, and it's a 5-year contract. And they can't change that contract, but it's not meeting their needs. You can't get a hold of their customer service at all. If something happens to their equipment, where do they get something in an emergency? Where do
Right.
they go?
Right. And that's been an issue since the program began. Because I think that's the bigger thing. I hear stories all the time of providers calling me up saying, what can we do about some of these mail order things? Because guess what? At 2 o'clock in the morning, and we've had an ice storm, my oxygen's not working. Yep. My company's in California, mail order, whatnot. So what do? You look in the phone book or you look online to look at your local oxygen provider, and they say, I'm sorry. I used to be able to, maybe I'd come out and I'd help you before because that's what we can do, but I don't have any room to come out. I don't have any money available to come out and help you like I used to before. Because again, most of your providers that are in the home medical equipment industry, they're in it because they love what they do. I've been doing this, I used to work at Medicare. And then I went from Medicare, got recruited into a home medical equipment company. This is my life. I've been doing it. And I know I only look in my 20s, but I've been doing it for almost 40 years. I mean, it's something that I eat, sleep, and drink. And it's so sad to see what could be to that oxygen patient that, oh man, the minute you get that oxygen, how much better you feel. I can get out, I can be me again. But to have to wait weeks upon weeks or have that emergency phone call at 2 o'clock at night and nobody comes help you, and again, half the time they have no idea what to do or even where to start. They rely on you professionals to help them out. And that's the problem, is most of your patients out there have no idea what to do when there's here's the number of companies you can work with. So what if Handi's right down the street? Big deal. They don't have the contract, so don't come here,
I did a survey recently just for fun of providers around the country. I made phone calls and said, hey, my dad's coming to town. He forgot his CPAP mask. I don't know what to do. Can you help me out? He's a Medicare recipient. What should I do? I picked up the phone. I called your company because he's landing here any moment. What can I do? And literally unanimously, they said, he's a Medicare recipient. Oh, there's no way we could help you because we don't know who he's getting the equipment from, where he is, and so as a result, we wouldn't be able to help you because we don't know how to get a hold of it. And even if we did, we don't provide that level of service. We can't do that, and I'm so sorry. Only one said that I could come to the office and that they would leave him another mask, but I could pay $150 if I wanted to. And they were very nice, and they were all nice, but it was so carte blanche, matter of fact, I was kind of shocked. And it was all throughout the country. So if that gives you a flavor for what is happening, it's not just local issues, it's a federal issue as well.
Federal, not only federal, but now state. As I mentioned earlier, oh, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say that I'm here to tell a story, but I can't help. I used to be a rehab administrator, and I think that the public policy folks really need to pay attention because we're touting savings, but I can, in my gut and in my head, those are cost shifts. Those are cost shifts, like we've heard today, to the healthcare industry. Those are cost shifts to personal and family resources. And they need to be digging into the data and looking for the cost shifts because I can guarantee they aren't saving any money. But I'm here today as a mother. I have an adult daughter who has a permanent physical disability. She knows I'm here, and she gave me permission to speak, which is kind of rare, but it's good. And she has used a wheelchair all of her life and will, and she's 37 years old. And she recently identified that her current chair needs to be replaced. And she called our preferred vendor, always been mine, and now she directs her own care. And it was found out she couldn't see Lisa because they don't have the contract. Now, that continuity of care we recognize in healthcare with our medical providers, our primary providers, our therapists, our other providers is really critical because people get to know you and they understand you, and you save time and money because you know what the next thing is, and it's destroying not just access to care but quality of care.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And make sure to tell your daughter thank you for allowing you to speak and share that story because that's what it's all about. And just because of some policies and rules and flawed programs, it's causing this heartache for, again, someone that she's probably, you guys have dealt with them from the get-go.
Yep.
So they walk in, hey, how are you? You feel great, you understand, they know your condition. Now to somebody else new that you have no idea, they don't know her history. And yeah, now, not only that, now they're gonna have to go and pull all the paperwork, and what does that do to the healthcare system? Now they're contacting doctors and whatnot and trying to get all the information that they need. It just doesn't make sense. And the scary part, folks, and this is the thing I want to drive home, it's no longer just Medicare. No longer just Medicare. We have a lot of states in our Midwest territory that went from straight Medicaid. Now, because of governments and state governments having to save money, they're now moving to managed care. Medicaid managed care. So now they're taking a look at this Medicare program and look at how much money they are saving. They're saving lots of money. So let's go ahead and we're going to start using those rates. And as I mentioned earlier, if we don't get this legislation passed in Minnesota, Minnesota Medicaid will be impacted and will be their reimbursement will be based on a flawed Medicare competitive bidding program. And so that Medicaid client that you have, they don't have money to pay for the equipment. And that's the scary part. So all these things that are rolling down here. How many of you work with the military folks? Any folks that you'd be like with the VA or anything like that? No? Well, the VA has a program which they do contract with medical equipment providers. And the VA came back, again, because everybody bases their prices on Medicare. Because of the rural rollout, and now all the prices for Medicare are based at this flawed competitive bidding rate, the VA, which has always followed the Medicare reimbursement, is not only using those competitive bidding prices, they're also reducing it by another 25%. Yeah, and so we have some folks that we work with that work by military bases. All of a sudden, my phone starts ringing off the hook, and like, what happened? What happened? Well, effective July 1st, when they did those rural cuts, all of a sudden, they didn't send a notice to their contractors. All of a sudden, they came in and 25% below that reduced rate. And those reduced rates, the average just in our area is a 50% reduction. And now you throw on another 25% reduction off of that. So now you're talking almost 75% reduction of what you got 2 years ago. And so what is going to happen? I moved it forward, but the 24.3% reduction in suppliers just in 1 year, it was 34.8 in the last 3 for Minnesota. What's going to happen? We have places out in upper Minnesota that may only have one provider to work with. One of the hospital-based home medical equipment companies closed their doors because they couldn't afford it. Couldn't afford it anymore. So anybody else want to have I don't, after Jonathan's lovely, cheery session, then you come to this, I want to kill somebody. But that's why we're asking you, we need to hear those stories. Congress needs to hear those stories. We have a champion now with Congressman Price now being the Secretary Price. We have some hope. We really do. I think there's a few of our home medical equipment providers in the room. There's some hope that maybe some common sense would prevail, so that statement that you made about, being able to help the most vulnerable people that need our help, some of the policies are not allowing that to happen. So we're hoping with them, we need to get him educated, and henceforth, this is an opportunity to do that. And so one of the things we need you guys to do is help. You want to advocate for those patients. We got some tools to help you. I have some papers up there that I would love, if you have a story about trying to take care of a patient that just turned into a nightmare because of the competitive bidding program, share your story. Allow us to use it. We tried, last year I was here and somebody had asked, I wish there was a phone number that when I'm sitting down and I'm taking that order for that patient and I'm so irate because I've called 10 different times and I still don't have it, I want to share my story, I want to talk to somebody, call our office. We did do an online, you could actually go in and type your story, because some of you don't like to maybe pick up the phone or too busy, you just go and so we did do that as well. But we really need your help. The beneficiaries need your help. The patients need your help. So I want to just, anybody else want to share a story? Again, I don't want to be the one talking the whole time. Go ahead.
It's not really so much of a story. I work for Fairview Home Care and Hospice, and I didn't know a lot going into this here, and just hearing everyone's stories, I'm thinking about how as home care like a home care company and other companies, how we get reimbursed now through Medicare with quality of care and our patient satisfaction scores, and I'm hearing all these stories of how they're affecting how patients are satisfied, and then they fill out these surveys and say, well, home care didn't get me this, or whatever company it is, and then we're not getting reimbursed based upon everyone's stories that they're sharing, because they're not satisfied, they're not happy, they're not getting the pressure relieving mattress they wanted, or it's taking 6 months to get this walker, or...
And they don't care.
No.
They don't care what you...
So then they're paying less money
right.
out to home care, who's going out there and caring for these patients based upon being able to provide...
Excellent points. Because
so mad.
No, and that's true, and I think that's the picture. So the government or CMS says, hey, we're going to do this based on quality care. Quality care, I think that's the new terms for everything, and hospitals are being penalized if they don't discharge. I mean, there's all these things. It's all based on quality care. But when your continuum of care is impacted because of these other issues or the other regulations or the other problems are impacting what it is that you're trying to do. Wow, okay. Good, that's a very good point, and nobody has shared that. So that is very important because that does impact you. And again, the patients themselves don't know all the other things or all the other pieces and puzzle parts
A lot of times they just think healthcare. You guys are all working together.
Right.
So
If they only knew,
need
right?
equipment, they think,
It's you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Well, the other piece that's missed is that the doctors don't always know what they're supposed to write on the prescriptions. I mean, it get one word off. I was trying to get a hospital bed, and the doctor had filled out the prescription, but gave a date, I think, for how long this person will need it. And the company couldn't do it. He said it wrong. So they had to go back and see the doctor, because it's got to also be in the doctor's notes. And it took us 3 months, and the gentleman just finally said, I don't want the bed anymore.
Oh my God.
And we ended up getting one free from someone else, because the doctor didn't know what he needed to write. The company wasn't going, this particular company wasn't going to go back to the doctor and tell them. I had to do it as a case manager, which, I mean, that's my role, that's fine. But it took us 3 or 4 times to get this doctor to write it right. And finally, the person, this was after 3 months, said, I don't want it anymore. I don't want it.
Burdensome.
So,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
They wait. The patients don't know. They're kind of like, why didn't he say it right? It's like, because he doesn't know. Because there's specific words that need to be said.
Well, and meanwhile, it's costing more money, because then you have like a nurse coming out.
Right.
And we
Right.
have to take care of this pressure ulcer.
Right.
We have to be
Right.
out there 3 times a week. We have to order supplies from Handi Medical. All
Yeah.
of a sudden, it's stage 4.
Yeah.
There's an infection. We need a wound vac. We need a PICC line. I mean, it just.
And you're calling us saying,
tumbles
why
down.
haven't you gotten this bed?
We're
And we're going, we're
and all of a sudden,
trying.
their pressure ulcer is improving.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. And that's where, I'm sorry, again, your name was? Melanie. Let's hope Melanie takes that information back, because again, we're not looking at the whole entire spectrum of care.
Right.
We're only looking at little individual silos. Okay, well, here's DME, we're saving a gazillion dollars. But yet over here in Part A, where it's home care and hospice and hospitals,
Clinics,
it's going,
doctors.
exactly.
Right.
And then you talk, just don't even get, I'm assuming several of you with clinicians and having to deal with orders, you don't even want to start talking about orders, right? Face-to-face exams, I mean, all this other junk.
But it's not the medical equipment providers, prerogative. They have to adhere to these regulations that are
And we
just as
understand
cumbersome in their organizations. Imagine what it's like to try to employ people to teach them what is required. So that's part of what I see throughout the country, is just as the regulations get tighter and the scrutiny gets greater, and even if you get paid, they potentially take it back. So you understand the risk associated with just even getting to the doctor and getting those chart notes and getting them back. That does go back 3 or 4 times. That is not a unique story. If anything, it's a typical story,
Right.
and you need to hear that. In the meantime, they have pressure ulcers. So it's not because they want to do that, it's because they're forced to do that. So I just want to make sure we completely understand one another, that it's really, we try to be partners, and they force us to almost act like arch enemies, and that's not the approach we want at all, because the bottom line is we're here for the patient.
Mm-hmm. And we're, like our association, we're trying to save our members. I have members left and right that says, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I'm in the red right now. I don't know what to do. And so that's the scary part. We're at almost the perfect storm, that if something is not done and fixed, it's even going to get worse. And just like the way of the family farm, once they go away, they're not coming back. It's the regulations are way too hard. It's too difficult to get in this industry. And it takes a lot of money to get into this industry. You have to be accredited. I mean, the amount of hoops and regulation that they have to dive into, even to become a medical equipment provider, they're not going to want to. Yes, we'll have one more comment. I think we're at our, go ahead.
I'm a community case manager for the elderly, and I deal with different managed care people, so like, it's just a stigma that's put on the people that you have to bill Medicare, like my MSC Plus people, because the equipment has to go through Medicare. So the minute one of them calls me and wants a walker, and I look up their insurance, and then I know it has to go through Medica, it's like, ugh.
Right.
really? Do you really need the water? Like, I mean, I know they
we know what you're saying. Right.
work because we have to go through Medicare instead of like one of my M-Show clients where it's like I can use anyone and bill anyone and use the providers that I like to use that provide good care. And
Yep.
it just puts a stigma on those clients. You're just like, you know.
And you're spot on. You're spot on. And you, like you said, no one likes to say that, but you just kind of go, oh man, and it's Friday at 3. Come on, I want to go home. Okay.
Stigma that I feel.
Yeah, and you're right. You're right.
Like, here's the process.
Yeah. Yeah.
For who knows how long now.
Again, so much for patient care. It's all about the almighty dollar. So again, I do know that we're right at 11 o'clock. So in closing, I can't thank you guys enough for sharing your stories. We so appreciate it. And like I said, it turns into kind of a, I don't know, support group, because I think it does help to kind of get it off your chest. But more importantly, we're now able to tell your stories. By having this session recorded, we will be able to share those stories, because again, we try to tell that to our members of Congress and to CMS, and they're like, nope, our phone's not ringing. Well, you guys are too busy trying to call a provider 10 times to get the equipment that you need. So again, thank you so very much. If you want to share any stories, here's a slip of paper up here that you can fill it out. We are in the back of the exhibit hall, so if you have any questions or if you want our card, if you want to, like again, if you just want to chat to somebody, my phone will always be available for you. So again, thank you very much. You guys do a great job.
Thanks, Rose. Appreciate it. Have a great day, guys.